Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to rip off from Charles Dickens. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times, from The Tale of Two Cities, and talk about how, in fact, in America, you could say that about American Catholicism and in our society in general. Now, before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto. Secutor in principio, et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. I think you can look at the society that we're in right now as a cup half full or a cup half empty. And no doubt, especially if you watch a lot of private YouTube content, in other words, not EWTN or Ascension Press, you're going to get a lot more of the apocalyptic doom and gloom clickbait. And I'm not going to name any YouTube channels that do this, but the large majority of them, Francis did this, 3 days of darkness. And if you're watching a lot of that, you're going to think that we're in a really bad time. And look, we are in a bad time. You could argue that this is the worst time in Christian history. Now, luckily, we have the foresight to see what happened in the other really, really bad time, which was, of course, the first 300 years of the existence of Catholicism, which at that time was the only Christian faith, the persecutions. But we have, with hindsight, to know that the persecutions, the blood of the martyrs, as they said, spread the church. The church grew at a very fast clip for being a very small cadre of people in the Palestine, today Palestine, to all corners of the earth. But in 300 years, it spread throughout the entire Roman Empire. And then don't forget, it went east toward India, toward Arabia, toward Africa, where a lot of the apostles died in these respective places. But eventually Catholicism won out and it went to every corner of the world. Think of St. Francis Xavier. And people chose to be Christians. And now you look at us, the ancestors of these people, the ancestors of the ancestors of the ancestors, where people are choosing to piss away their faith. They're choosing. And we live in a very anti-Christian time. And you see the word Antichrist used quite a bit in the New Testament and the epistles. And what is Antichrist? Anything that is against the message of Jesus Christ. And we definitely live in an Antichrist time in that regard. And then you look at the pervasiveness of abortion and euthanasia. And you can't even get straight definitions what a man and a woman are and what marriage is, just the basic stuff. We are in a bleak time. We're in a bleak time where hedonism, where nihilism has taken root. Materialism, postmodernism, relativism, all these things are poaching away all Christians. And really, not just Christians. If you look at Muslims and Hindus and Orthodox Jews that live in the West, all of them have suffered hemorrhaging of numbers since the 1960s. It's not just a Vatican II thing. This happened to every religious group. So yes, all of you can testify that you've had family members that have left the faith or left Christianity in general. Absolutely. We live in a time that is bleak. But with the worst of time comes the best of times. And if you look at other times in history, you look at the 4th century when Arianism was running rampant. And you look at the 16th century where the Ottoman Turks were running rampant and the Protestant Revolution was happening. This is the time where saints are made. This is, in some ways, the best time to be alive as a Christian. It really is, because we are what? The church militant. Remember, there's 3 groups in the communion of saints. The church triumphant, those that are in heaven. The church suffering, those who are in purgatory, who will eventually be in heaven. And then the church militant, which is every living baptized person. We are in the church militant. And as the name suggests, we're supposed to fight. This is the time where we're supposed to evangelize. We're supposed to catechize, we're supposed to practice apologetics, and we are supposed to fight. This is a spiritual warfare. It's a spiritual battle, angels versus demons, whatever you want to call it. And yes, we can focus on how things are bleak and how we live in a society that is anti-Christian and progressively more anti-Christian. But in some ways, how does that benefit us, right? We can fall into cynicism, we can fall into depression. And I think a better way to look at it is, yeah, this is a tough time, but thank God I'm alive during this time, because this is a time that is a time of tumult, for sure. But it's a time that we can affect change on a small level. Some would say the Benedictine option of just going to West Texas and building a bunker is the best option and just trying to raise your family or a group of families together. That's ultimately up to you, but this is a time to fight. And I would say that this is the time to prove our mettle. This is the time to do our works of mercy. This is the time that good can come out of it. And you can already see it on a microcosmic level with American Catholicism. In some ways, it was good, the abuses of Vatican II, the spirit of Vatican II, and with the most recent pontificate of Francis, because it has made a certain segment of the Catholic population really go back to their faith and to really go to traditional Catholicism. And I don't think that would have happened had we had Pius XIII after Benedict, if we had a more conservative pope. And so you look, the seminaries are being cleaned up. The new clergy, the young clergy coming out of seminaries in most of America are Orthodox. And we've purged largely the homosexual infiltration that happened in the last 6 decades out of the seminaries that led to all the sex abuse crisis. And so there are signs and glimmer of hope. There are traditional Catholics that are coming. You see the younger, the Gen Zers, who see the filth and detritus that we are mired in, and they are rejecting it. They are rejecting it. Not all of them, but they are rejecting it and going to something that's true, which is Christianity, which is our faith, something that's timeless, something that is immutable, doesn't change. There's no, what is the definition of man or woman? They are tired of all that. They're tired of the hookup culture because they know it leads to depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation, all these problems. And so you see these glimmers of hope. And so I think this time that we live in, 2025 America and onward, is an exciting time. It's a scary time. But what did Christ tell us in Matthew 6? Be not afraid. What did John Paul II always tell us? What was his first message in 1978? Be not afraid. Think of Sister Faustina. Jesus, I trust in you. And we have to trust in his faith. We have to align our will with God's will and trust in him that ultimately, if we fight the good fight, like Paul talks about in 2 Timothy, we fight the good fight. We run the good race. That ultimately, if we stay in grace and do works of mercy and have faith in him and whatnot, we will ultimately win, because we will be in heaven. And what do we know if you read Revelation? We ultimately on earth will win as well. So do not be afraid. And look at the time that we're in. You can't go back in time. This is the time we're in. There's a lot of suckiness about this time, but this is also a time where we can shine. So let's be like the Gospels say, that lamp. We don't put lamps underneath tables. We put them up high to shine. Let us shine to other people and be great Christians. And let's affect a change. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.